So welcome everyone. If you're just joining us, we're going to give it another couple minutes to give everyone time to trickle in, and then we will begin. So give us 1 or 2 minutes, and we'll be good to go. Okay, I think we might as well make a start. So welcome everyone. Thanks for coming to our first funding call webinar for the HELA Research Cooperative. So thanks for taking your time out of, I suppose, part of your lunch break to come to this. The idea of this webinar is just to give you an overview of how this funding call is working, including what we're looking for and the ins and outs of applying for funding. So hopefully it's all very clear, but of course, at any point during the talk, if you have any questions, just put them in the chat. And my colleague Ian Wiggins is on hand to answer your questions. Yeah, without any further ado, we'll jump into it. So I recognize that possibly some of you in the call aren't completely familiar with what HELA is all about. So HELA is the Healthy Ears Limited Annoyance Initiative. This was something that it really emerged from some work that I had done within the Audio Engineering Society's Technical Committee on Acoustics and Sound Reinforcement. This is probably going back about 7 or 8 years now. We were at a conference and we were talking amongst us live sound engineers, saying that isn't it a real headache when you're going from city to city, country to country, venue to venue, and everyone is dealing with the sound levels inside the venues and the noise pollution outside the venue in a different manner. It just makes our jobs very difficult because everywhere we go, it's a different set of rules, different set of procedures, and it all makes for a very confusing working environment in that regard. So that was sort of the starting point, and we very naively thought that, oh, within the AES we can solve all this, we can answer all these questions, no problem. And we ended up coming up with more questions than answers. I'm not sure we had any answers, to be honest, but a lot of questions, and in particular, a lot of research questions. We identified some quite significant gaps in knowledge surrounding the live event sector, both in terms of hearing health and noise pollution and all points in between. So that's really where HELA spun out of. We developed this technical document within the Audio Engineering Society that was released in 2020. That in its conclusion, it said we should do something, and we pitched this idea about HELA as this industry-wide international group that supports evidence-based education and research. And so here we are. So that's in general what we are. I should say that last year we launched the HELA certification, which is an online training platform for anyone involved in the live event industry, really just to get up to speed with the fundamental knowledge and best practice around safe listening and noise pollution disruption minimization. So that's been steadily growing over the past year and some change. And then the HELA Research Cooperative, we secured a pot of funding from UKRI to at least start our first 2 years of the research side of HELA to support some collaborative research in this space, which is what we'll talk about today. Now, I suppose you ask the question, why are we doing this now? I think I talk with some of my colleagues and we say that, well, it's sort of the planets have all sort of aligned to kind of cause all this to happen now, because no sooner did we start to draft our AES technical document than did the World Health Organization came calling, saying we've got this Make Listening Safe Initiative that Ian Wiggins was directly involved with, and they said, we're looking for more people to participate in putting together this global standard for safe listening venues and events. And then on top of that, it's just there seems to all of a sudden be a focus on this. We have our UK partners for HELA, which is the Nighttime Industries Association Listen for Life campaign. And there just seems to be all sorts. We get things from Tinnitus UK and the Noise Abatement Society, and it just seems to be there's quite a big focus on the live event sector and how we can keep our ears safe while still enjoying the shows and not annoying the neighbors too much. So the timing seems right, and there seems to be an appetite for further education and research in this area. So, diving right in then, for this funding call, we have a research board within HELA, and they've quite usefully come up with a list of research priorities for each funding call. And I should say that we have 3 funding calls that will take place over the course of the next 2 years. So the first one is happening now. The second one will launch this autumn, and the third one will launch early 2027. And each funding call will have a slightly different focus. This first funding call is very much focused on the in-venue, on-site audience and staff experience. So it's all the things to do with hearing health for the people who are there on site. The next funding call that will be launching in the autumn will focus on the offsite issues, so primarily noise pollution and annoyance, and probably elements of policy in there. And then the third one, which will launch at the beginning of 2027, is more of an anything goes one. Emerging topics from the first funding call, something that didn't quite fit in the first 2 funding calls. It's really there to kind of to mop up the rest of the ideas that we might not have been able to address in the first 2 calls. So for this first funding call, we'll go through the research priorities just to give me an idea of, in general, what we're thinking. It's not to say that if you have an idea outside of this list that you can't apply. It's just to give you an idea of what we're thinking and where sort of our heads are in terms of where we'd like the research to be headed for this. But as I say, if the topic you might have in mind doesn't appear in this list, don't worry so much about that. And if you do want to contact us, myself or Ian or Sarah, who's on the call, and just kind of sense check to make sure that this fits with our priorities, feel free. Just drop us an email, contact us on LinkedIn. We're more than happy to help. So the first research priority is optimizing methods and tools for the measurement, prediction, and real-time monitoring of audience sound exposure, including the long-term cumulative exposure. And again, from my experience and talking to others in the industry, this is something where there's significant variation in practice across the world. Some areas do it quite well, others not at all. And I think really what we need to be pushing for is essentially a streamlined, robust method for doing this. And one that is practical, but also giving us the data, the information that we need, that it's useful to essentially determining if someone's been overexposed to sound or not, and giving us ideally real-time data so we can react to this on the fly at these events. We've also got improving understanding of the physiological and psychological effects of sound exposure on humans and live music. For example, one of the big areas that I think hasn't been significantly addressed or thoroughly addressed so far is the effects of low frequency sound exposure, as well as the differential effects between music and noise. So is noise-based noise exposure the same as music-based? Are there differences? If you read the literature in this area, there seems to be some debate in that. And then certainly potential benefits of quiet rest periods during events and what are the audience preferences for sound levels. I think there's a lot of work to be done in this area. Certainly with the low frequency side, I'd love to start seeing answers on that. But, for a 6-month pilot study or feasibility study that we're offering here, I wouldn't expect results. I think what we would expect is maybe a project to put a framework in place or kind of a set of methods in place for how to go about answering these questions. Certainly something like that would require a very long-term study, I think. So we're not expecting you to solve everything in these short funded projects, but at least get things moving towards arriving at an answer at some point. We also have developments in room acoustics or sound system design that facilitates safe listening environments. So kind of looking at the optimization of your venue or event in terms of the sound system or the acoustics, how it can kind of bring up the audience experience a notch and really make an excellent live event experience while simultaneously making sure that we're avoiding the worst of the worst sound exposures. I think safe is maybe not the right word here. I think going to a rock show is always going to be a certain risk for sound exposure, but we just want to make sure that the worst offenses are avoided, and we're keeping people as safe as we can within reason, while still having a good rock show, if that's what you're into. The next one is developing an evidence based around the effectiveness, acceptability, uptake, and sound quality of personal hearing protection devices. And this also includes sort of the social side of that, the cultural side of that. I can think back to when I was a teenager and I had one friend. We were all musicians. We all played in bands. And I had one friend who was a drummer who got custom mold hearing protection. At the time, it was probably the late 90s. We sort of mocked him for it, saying, "Oh, what are you doing? Why are you wearing those?" And now he's laughing because he doesn't have any hearing issues, and the rest of us have some level of tinnitus. But it's very much kind of a social thing when you're a teenager. At least back then, it was sort of yeah, it wasn't the cool thing to do to be protecting your hearing. Maybe that's changing now with the younger generation. I don't know. But it's certainly something that we need to look into. And, if there are barriers preventing people from having effective and appropriate hearing protection at events, I think we need to learn more about that and understand what we can do to make this more accessible. And I mean, I see there's so many companies out there. I think some might even be in the call today that are working in this space. And clearly we've come a long way already, but I think there's more we can do in this space. So that would be an interesting area to potentially pursue for one of these projects. I think second to last on the list is developing and evaluating strategies for raising awareness and knowledge about hearing health amongst audience members, venue and event staff, and other key stakeholders. Again, it's on the education side. What can we do to make this a bit more forefront in people's minds? It doesn't have to be the only consideration. We don't want to be freaking people out about this, but you should at least be aware that there is a risk going to these events and understand what your options are to protect yourself if that's of interest. So I think there's more to be done in this area as well. And I think this is the last. Identifying challenges and opportunities for promoting safe listing through the implementation of regulatory standards and guidelines. So that's much more on the policy side of things. So if you may be involved in local government, national government, international organizations, what can be done here? Can we build on what the World Health Organization has put out in their global standard and help feed that down to more of the local level? Not only for audience safety, but also for dealing with noise pollution and making sure that people who live around events and venues aren't being kind of subjected to significant disturbances on a regular basis. And just having dealt with a lot of the policy myself, working as an engineer over the years, there's a lot of room for improvement here. So again, maybe a project looking into aspects of this could be of interest. So those are our research priorities. They're all on the documentation that is online. I think if Sarah is available in the call, I think she'll pop a link to our funding page so you can download all these documents. I mean, pretty much everything I'm presenting here today is straight from the documents anyway, so you can have those for reference if putting together a proposal. So here's the process that we've put together for applying for some of this funding that we're offering. We've tried to make it fairly light touch. I don't want anyone sitting and spending hours and days and weeks putting together a full project proposal that has little to no chance of being funded. I think we've kind of flipped that on its head and said, okay, as a starting point, if you've got an idea, even if you don't have a full team together yet, we've got a one-page form here where you briefly describe your idea and kind of just submit your expression of interest. And this allows us to kind of very quickly filter through, give some quick feedback, and say either, yes, this is really interesting and we want you to proceed in the process, or, it just doesn't quite fit, or we don't think we quite have the capacity to fund this for this funding round. So it's like I said, it's a one-page form. I don't anticipate this taking a very long time for any of you to fill out. So hopefully it's not a big ask. And critically, you don't need your full team together for this stage. I'll talk about in a minute what is needed for the teams, what we're requiring. But at this point, even if it's just you with an idea, that's fine. And we can help within the HELA initiative to help piece your team together if you do have some missing pieces to it. So essentially, it's a 150-word summary of what you're thinking. What's the title? What's it all about? And then we go from there. Now, to help support this, if you are trying to kind of build up a collaborative team, we are looking for academia and industry to work together on these things. We do have a networking event coming up on Monday, 15th of June here in Derby. So free dinner and drinks. So it's an evening event. So if you are in the UK in the area, pop over to this. I think Sarah might be able to share the registration link in the chat. But anyone who's interested in any of this, come along, have a chat with us, meet some other like-minded people. I think it'd be a good opportunity to kind of get things moving and maybe brainstorm some ideas at the same time. But after that, then the week after the networking event is the deadline for expressions of interest. So this is required to have a chance of progressing for the rest of this funding call. So we need an expression of interest in for you to be considered for the full funding. So that's due a minute before midnight, whatever your local time may be. And then we're intending to give you feedback very swiftly. So within a week, we'll have feedback to you. It won't be long feedback, but a few sentences, maybe some numerical ratings of how we judged your expression of interest. Just so you get a quick answer, know that either it's something that you need to be thinking about more, or something that maybe come back to us again in another one of our funding calls. So I've got a QR code on there that gets you to the website, but I think Sarah's put it in the chat already anyway. So that's that. So if you're successful with your expression of interest, then we will be inviting you to a research workshop in July. And this is scheduled to happen Monday and Tuesday, the 20th and 21st of July, again here at Derby. We have a very nice new business school that was just built, very fresh building, nice facilities, but it's actually really nicely laid out for these sorts of events, for kind of team working and then development of ideas, I suppose. So like I said, invitation only. You have to have your expression of interest accepted to come to this. It's in person. We have budget to cover your expenses for this. So travel and accommodation is all on us. And that is for if you're in the UK or beyond. So I think we've certainly budgeted to cover all the costs if you're in Europe. If you're further afield, like in the States or Australia or anywhere else like that, we do have a limit of how much we can cover, but we can certainly cover part of your expenses up to a point. I think the full details are in the PDF that's on our funding website. So yeah, our idea is that we don't want you out of pocket for taking part in these workshops. We want to cover your expenses. So hopefully that's all acceptable. I think if I were in the position of applying, I think that would be great. So if someone in your team isn't able to attend in person, that is okay. We can support online participation, but we're really not encouraging it. I think there's something to being in the room physically for these 2 days to really hammer out your project ideas. There's something that you just can't quite get it in the same way if you're online. So really, we want at least the majority of the team to be in person. If you have one or two members that can't make it for various reasons, of course, they can dial in online. That's fine. But very much we'd encourage in-person participation if possible. Um, so yeah, the whole point of these is the teams to develop your research project ideas with the support of us from the HELA Initiative there. There'll be various talks happening along the way. So it's not just us kind of locking you in a room and say, well, come out at the end of the weekend and we'll, and at the end of the workshop and we'll hear what you've come up with. It's very much kind of a dynamic sort of thing where you get a chance to kind of learn about other strands of research happening in the sector. Maybe that will help spur some ideas. At the end of the event, you pitch your project, so a short presentation to the HELA Research Board, and then and there they'll go and deliberate, and before the very end of the workshop, we'll have a decision in principle about whether you're funded or not. My hope is that if we're inviting you to these workshops, that we're essentially going to try to fund your project if it's possible. So yeah, if you're getting these invites to this stage, you have an extremely good chance of getting the funding. So again, I don't want to be wasting people's time. I want this to be kind of high success rate at this stage, if not 100% success rate. That would be the ideal. For the formal application, so this is a requirement. So our funder, where we got our money for this, is UKRI. They do require a full application eventually. So if you do have a decision in principle that we're going to fund you, then you have until middle of September to put in a full application for this. And this is where all the full costings come in and things about ethics and EDI and all of those things need to be really spelled out in black and white. It's not to say that these formal applications are at risk of being rejected. It's just that we need to make sure that between July and September, your idea hasn't changed drastically, and that you've just made sure that the formal proposal conforms to the funding principles from UKRI. Of course, at this stage, we're here to support you on that. We're not just going to try to catch you out. My hope is that this is essentially just an exercise to organize your thoughts so you have a full plan in place ready to hit the ground running for when the funding hits. So yeah, that comes in middle of September. 2 weeks later, we'll have the outcomes once our research board has just reviewed everything and make sure everything is all okay. And then step 4 is the project delivery. So our requirement is that from the outcomes being announced from the full application, the project should start no more than 3 months after that. And then the projects, once they start, must be completed no more than 6 months after the start date. So our ultimate deadline for starting a project for this funding round is the very beginning of 2027, 4th of January. So there's quite a bit of time to get everything in order for these projects. And the expectation is towards the end of the project, we would kindly ask that all the teams deliver one of these webinars, one of these lunchtime webinars, to detail what they found and what their experience was with the project, just to help with that dissemination and kind of get that experience and knowledge that they've generated out there to the wider public. So that's the process. In terms of eligibility, it's all on our documentation on the website. But the key points is that the leader for the funding bid must be from someone that works for an organization that is eligible for UKRI funding. So I've got a QR code on the screen there that will take you to the UKRI website. That is a very lengthy website listing pretty much every organization that is eligible to lead one of these projects. So if you're looking to lead one of the projects, make sure that you are eligible. If you work for a higher education institution in the UK, it's pretty much guaranteed you're eligible. If you work for other organizations within the UK, again, check UKRA guidance on that to make sure. And I think there's a few select international organizations that might be eligible, but certainly check the current guidance from UKRI on that. I can't really give any details on that because I know it changes quite often. But essentially, the project lead is taking responsibility for directing the project, and it's their employing institution are there to administer the project. So yeah, so scan the QR code to see if you're eligible, but otherwise that's that. We do require academic involvement of some sort, so at least someone on your team needs to be an academic, whether from UK or abroad, that doesn't matter so much. We encourage, of course, early career academics, get them involved, get them kind of a taste of working on a funded project. And if you're a PhD or postdoc researcher, absolutely we encourage you to get involved. But certainly a PhD or postdoc won't be able to lead on any of these projects. So you need to make sure a more senior academic is willing to take the leadership role if that applies to you. For industrial involvement, again, we're trying to get collaboration between academia and industry. It's something that we think is slightly missing in our industry. So we need to have at least one person representing industry within the project team. And the key thing here is that these projects, they're not intended to be coming up with new commercial products or coming up with protected intellectual property. We need to treat these as pre-competitive. So in a way, if you have kind of competing companies, there's no reason to not collaborate on these sorts of things. And we're seeing bits and pieces of this in the industry already between very staunch competitors. But it's something, it's not there for product development. It's here to really generate knowledge and understanding and practice that is beneficial to the entire industry. If it leads on to commercial developments, that's fine. But the core of the project absolutely needs to be open to all. So yeah, so projects should be pushing forward or in some cases establish work in an area that is positive to the industry. For stakeholders, this isn't necessarily something you need to consider now, but before your project starts, if you're successful with the funding, we are hoping for at least 3 stakeholders from the industry, and these could be musicians, audience members, neighbors, local policymakers, anyone involved in the industry who has a stake in what you're looking at to get them involved in some way. We have an outreach group within HELA that consists of a lot of these individuals already who are interested in contributing to research in some way. So we can help as matchmakers in this. So if you can't think of people to invite for this, we've got you covered. So they're not formal team members, so to speak, but they're people who will pop into your project from time to time, essentially to let you have a sense check of whether what you're doing is meaningful to them and something that would be positive, just to make sure we're getting a wider and diverse voice represented in the research that we're supporting. I think that's very important. Quickly for international partners, because I know we do have quite a bit of interest outside of the UK, which is wonderful. We are able to have project co-leads that are international. We're able to fund direct costs for those individuals, and it's up to 30% of the total budget for the project. We can't cover indirect or overheads for those individuals. And again, look at UKRI guidance on this for more details, but there is a method for funding international participants. You could also be a project partner, so that could be in-kind support where we could fund travel directly, or you could be a subcontractor, so you just do some paid contract work related to the study, and you could be both. You could be a partner and subcontractor, if it can be justified. For all of this, it just has to be clearly justified that it's something that is essential to the viability of the project. So again, more information on that can be found on the UKRI website if this pertains to you. For the resources, this isn't something you need to think about at this stage, really. This is something that comes at the full application. So pretty much once you're guaranteed you're getting funding from us. But they should be costed as with any standard UKRI proposal. They should be costing up to 100% of the full cost, where the request to us is for 80%. If you're at a university or a big organization, no doubt there'll be someone on staff there who understands how to work with these things. I know I'm no good with this stuff, but we've got a research office that they speak this language and they know how to massage these numbers and make them work. And yeah, resources as expected. You can request for researcher and technician time, travel, substance, consumables, facilities, and other costs directly incurred for delivering the research. Although just note that if you're an international partner, we do have those limitations that I just mentioned that are in place. Quick note, I mean, the live event industry is arguably one of the most diverse in the world, especially if you consider the workforce and the audience. So kind of equality, diversity, inclusion is very important to what we do. We want a wide range of voices being heard. And so this is really where our outreach group within HELA can help you. We want to get those voices engaged in your projects in a meaningful way. They're not project partners, so to speak, but they're kind of these friendly voices who will come in from time to time to make sure that what you're doing is meaningful and positive for them. So we can support you on this. It's not necessarily something to think about at this stage for the expression of interest, but if you get to the full application stage, this is something that will need to be addressed. So just to recap the key dates. We've got a networking event on the 15th of June. So if you're in the area, do turn up. We'll feed you and give you drinks and stuff, get to meet some like-minded people. But ultimately, the expression of interest deadline, which is mandatory for this funding call, is due 22nd of June, 1 minute to midnight, your local time. And then from there, if you are successful, the expectation is that at least a good portion of your team is present on the 20th and 21st of July for our research workshops, which obviously will cover your expenses for that. So that's that. I know that was a lot of information and I went very quickly, but hopefully that was useful and kind of gives you an idea of what we're all about with our funding. With that, I imagine we still have a few minutes left for any questions, so I will stop sharing. And yeah, I think Ian and I and Sarah are happy to answer any questions. So thank you very much. It all sounds good. You can give me the thumbs up. Thanks, Vargas. Ooh, I'm getting more thumbs up. Excellent. Lisa has a hand raised. Sarah, can we allow Lisa to unmute your microphone, please? Just give us a second, Lisa. I know there's a few buttons that need clicking. All right, you should be able to unmute your mic now, Lisa.
Oh, thank you. Thank you, Adam.